Welcome to the SIP, the Solstice Innovations podcast. In each episode, we chat with industry experts and innovators in insurance and insurtech. Join us for insights on trends, technologies, and the stories driving our industry forward. Let's sip on knowledge together at the SIP.
Hello, and welcome to the SIP. I'm Jon Umstead with Solstice Innovations. For the podcast this time around, we've had to do a little bit of change up. We had a guest that was lined up, and then we had some scheduling difficulties and hope to get him on perhaps next month. So really kind of punting for this month's episode because we want to keep a nice cadence going, the release of our podcast. So I'm flying solo today, but I do have a relevant topic that I think any of you listeners may be interested in. And it is really around how AI can be used to meet insurance marketing needs. Or really any marketing needs, or perhaps any other research type of needs. So I'm going to walk you through a real life example that's very, very recent in my history. Now, to begin with, the guest that we wanted this month actually was interested in having him on the podcast because he recently facilitated or moderated a panel discussion at an industry conference, an insurance industry conference, with a panel that was made up of attorneys. And the topic was the use of AI, in particular in the legal sphere, in court cases. And in these cases, these attorneys presented actual real life cases, public knowledge, so nobody was breaking any client trust, but cases in which an attorney used AI to prep their briefs, their legal briefs. And I can imagine that the prep went something like this. I'm using ChatGPT, right? And I say, tell me about a case in which blah, blah, blah. Right. And so then AI brings it back and says, here's a case law type of example. And the attorney would take it and just chunk it into their brief as fact. And in fact, it was not fact. So when it was exposed in all of these cases that the attorneys were referencing cases that really didn't exist, then they were in a lot of trouble, right? So not something you want to do. The attorneys weren't trying to be nefarious in any way. They were just trying to save themselves a little time, but they didn't stop to check and make sure that AI was actually giving them real casework. And I've had that experience myself, on the personal side. In writing the book, I wanted to do some research. And so there were certain types of characters that I wanted to research. So I would say, hey, tell me some stories about blah, 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 whatever topic, whatever subject. And it would send me back something that was phenomenal. I'm like, this is great. I really love this story. I want to reference it in my book. And so then I would follow up with Chat and say, okay, give me some references about this. And basically Chat would say, there's no references because this is fictional. I just made it up. You said tell you a story, and that's what I did. I told you a story. And so I think that's effectively what was going on with these legal cases as well. So lesson number one, when you're using artificial intelligence to do any type of research for any type of purpose, make sure you're asking the right questions and make sure that you're asking for references, and then go follow up with those references. Make sure that what it's giving you is real and not fiction that it had just made up, or fiction that it found out in search of thousands and thousands of websites and blog posts and all that sort of thing. So you really have to check those references. It's no different than doing any type of writing or white paper authoring or anything like that in the past. You got to have references. They have to be true references. You got to check them and you have to list them. So big lesson there. But anyways, that's why we wanted this guest on. I found that whole topic very interesting, and we'll try to get him on next month. But for this month, again, just dealing with me. So apologies for that. But so backstory. I was on a planning committee for the National Flood Conference in Dallas this year. And the planning committee that I was part of was on the training and marketing track. So we brainstormed several topics that we thought would make good sessions, breakout sessions, or plenary sessions, or what have you, at the conference. and then proposed them to the greater audience and narrowed it down to 4. And lo and behold, one of the sessions that we proposed was about case studies in successful marketing campaigns from other industries that could be applied to the flood insurance industry. And the reason this was a good topic is because flood insurance has had notoriously bad uptake rates or take-up rates. Something like somewhere between 2 and 4% of properties that should have flood insurance have it, and usually that's only because they actually it's about 2 to 4% of properties, and I think it's something like maybe 25% of those that should have it. But and those that do have it, it's typically because they have to. It's been mandated because of the type of loan that they have and the risk that's assessed on that property. So people don't just usually buy flood insurance because they own a property. They buy flood insurance typically because they're being made to. So that makes it a challenge and the big question of how do we get property owners to recognize that wherever they are, they have a risk almost wherever they are. There's a risk of flooding. And so they ought to really seriously consider flood insurance. So it's an educational thing. It's, a whole bunch of other things. But the challenge is, well, how do we market flood insurance in such a way that gets people to recognize that, hey, maybe I really ought to have this. So marketing that resonates with the policyholder or potential policyholder. So that's why this topic was important. But that aside, what I wanted to do here was walk you through sort of the behind the scenes for how we put this session together. So first of all, as we looked at it further, we determined that, hey, this really wasn't a good candidate for a breakout session with a panel, that this was a better topic to be presented. So I volunteered to present it. So here's where the AI process began. We knew what the topic was. We knew what we wanted to get out of it, right? But needed the content. So one of the first things I did was I used AI and said, hey, I'm going to do this presentation. It's on X, Y, and Z. And I want to first write a white paper. Before putting the PowerPoint presentation together, I want to write a white paper from which I can draw the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to need X number of cases of successful marketing campaigns within the insurance industry that are not flood insurance related. Okay? And give me references for these cases because I wanted to make sure that these quoted references or these quoted cases are actual and real and accurate. So I got all the information, got more than I needed. And then I went back and said, okay, now I want some more from non-insurance industries. Got a bunch of those back. And then I said, okay, give me a couple that are flood related, but not flood insurance. Those back as well. So I've got all this raw material that has references included, and I can go outside of chat and I can begin checking the references and make sure that the information that I've got is accurate. Then I started doing some further breakdowns and some further assessment. And I said, okay, if I were going to use this marketing campaign or something like it for flood insurance, how might I go about doing that? What might it look like? And what are the odds of success? And I went through a whole series of questions. Really, it was a conversation with AI to kind of go through all of that. Right. Then I had a bunch of additional questions, additional conversation between me and ChatGPT. And with each response, AI was learning more about what I was asking about, and it could get more and more honed in answers for me, more succinct answers. And I could take the responses and I could do one of two things. I could take the response and I could say, put it in a Word document and then email it to myself. Or I could take the response and say, well, that's not quite right. What I'm really getting at is, and then I'd clarify and get additional response. And it really is like a conversation with some limitations, actually a lot of limitations. But if you're patient and you ask the right questions and you ask for the right references and proofs of what you're asking or what it's telling you, then it can be very effective at helping you do all the research that you need to do. All right, so skipping a bunch of steps. I've got all this raw material now in a bunch of different files. Let's say it's a dozen different files, Word documents that I've saved throughout this conversation. So now I take all of those documents and I just slap them together in a single document in a semblance of an order that I know I want to have for the white paper. I guess I did leave out one important point here. I already had an outline for the white paper. I knew what was going to be in it or where I wanted content around what subject. So I was basically taking those pieces and parts and putting them into the order that I had already outlined. So now I've got this extremely rough cut, entirely generated from AI bit of content in this white paper. So now the real work begins. If I liked and agreed with and could prove out things that it was saying, then okay, I would rewrite it in my own words or brief it because sometimes it can be lengthy, or build on it because sometimes the responses can be pretty brief, and then add additional content, add additional sections, etc. Until I now have a white paper that can, with stuff that I researched through AI, but that I then made my own and added to and deleted from and rearranged, etc. So, and I've got the references because I saved all of those and put them all in APA format and put them in at the conclusion of the document. So, got the document now, but I'm not done with it yet. The next step then was to take that document as is, upload it into Grammarly. You can use any other tool. This isn't a Grammarly commercial, but I use Grammarly and I uploaded the document in there, and I want to do a few things. One, I just want to kind of check the syntax and am I saying things in the right way, or does it have some suggestions for how to make it a more of a clear point depending on the audience that I'm going after. Right, so do that. But then a couple of other really key points. One is that at the end of Grammarly's assessment, it'll say, hey, it looks like maybe 5% of this is AI generated. And I'm actually okay with 5% because just using Grammarly alone will give it a little bit of an AI feel in some places where it's suggesting you modify the text, right? The sentence structure, the paragraph, what have you. So that's going to give you a little bit of an AI score. But I try to keep it 10% or less. And if I can get 5% and under in that Grammarly score as saying, hey, this looks kind of like it's AI generated, that's what I'm shooting for, because I really want the document, no matter how it started out, I ultimately want that document to be original material. I want it to be what I wrote based on the research. So that's what I shoot for. Anything under 5 is what I like, but I'm good with anything under 10%. All right, the next thing it can do for you, though, is it can do that plagiarism check. Not just check for, does it look like it's AI generated, but does it look like you're lifting from somewhere? Because that's where you can, again, get into trouble using AI. It doesn't care, right? It doesn't care about copyright. It doesn't care about any of that plagiarism, any of that kind of stuff. It's going to give you what it gives you. So it's up to you to make sure that you aren't plagiarizing anything. And I like that also about Grammarly and tools like it, is that it'll give you a score on that and say, yeah, doesn't look like you're plagiarizing anything, or it looks like this looks very similar to what's stated at X, Y, and Z. So do you want to reference X, Y, and Z? Yes. Okay. And then you add it to your reference list and keep yourself out of trouble that way. So very powerful combination of tools. And ultimately what it did for me was get me to a white paper that covered a whole lot more territory than really I wanted to cover in the PowerPoint presentation at the conference, but plenty of material for the conference itself. So next step, putting that presentation together. So I experimented. I did ask ChatGPT to use the white paper that I uploaded to it and said, take this white paper now and turn it into a presentation, 45-minute presentation. It gave me barely a starting point. I can't say it gave me nothing, but it didn't give me much. It gave me a starting point of a slide deck. I would call it an outline. You can also ask it to generate some notes for you per slide, and you can ask for it to suggest visuals per slide. But I found that those results are virtually useless. I did ask it to just to see what would happen. and wasn't anything I could use. Even the visual recommendations are like it puts a box on a slide and says, here's where you can put an image that connotes whatever, but it's all text based. I really didn't find it helpful. I can't say it gave me nothing, but I can say it didn't give me much. And I basically started from scratch, putting the PowerPoint presentation together. But that's where it all started, with doing research on chat, asking a lot of questions, getting a lot of references that I could then go check and make sure that they were valid, assembling it all, rewriting it, adding to it, checking it with tools like Grammarly to make sure there's no plagiarism, make sure that it doesn't look AI generated, and then ultimately from that white paper, create the PowerPoint presentation to give at the conference. A couple of tips here. One is that you've got to keep in mind, if you use AI, that's great, and I know a lot of companies have restrictions on what you can put through AI. I use it kind of on a personal level, not through any kind of company issued device, and I don't put anything company specific in there if it's not publicly available. I might ask AI to, look at the Solstice.tech website, or look at the Solstice Innovations LinkedIn homepage, and that sort of thing. But if it's not out there publicly, I don't put it in there. And I know a lot of companies have much deeper restrictions than that, and with good reason. So you do want to be careful about what you're doing. But with this particular white paper, the presentation is public. The white paper is hanging off of our website, and it's just out there. So I wasn't particularly too worried with anything that might be going on behind the scenes of AI. But aside from that, very, very important to remember that AI doesn't replace thought leadership. It doesn't replace thought leadership. It just amplifies it. Keep that in mind. I've already mentioned a couple of times, you can't count on AI's results to be accurate, or even in the ballpark of what you're after. So you've got to do multiple things. You've got to keep drilling down, keep asking questions to getting to the point that you want, and you got to ask for references, and you've got to have the discipline to go check those references and make sure that it's accurate and on the up and up. And then whatever you're putting together, you do have to check and make sure you're not plagiarizing anything from anybody. If you don't do those things, you can find yourself in trouble. That's really kind of about it. I really use AI pretty extensively as a research tool. I use it to generate some thoughts. It's almost like brainstorming with AI rather than getting a whole bunch of people together in a room brainstorming with them. I prefer the people in the room. That's not always feasible, right? So AI makes a pretty good substitute to just do some brainstorming with, get some ideas from, and you pick them and run with. Now, whatever you're doing, like in my case, I started with a white paper that I didn't plan to begin with. I volunteered to do a presentation. So I backed up and said, let's do a white paper, then I'll put the presentation together. All right. Now I also have material to create actual Solstice marketing materials from, right? The white paper is for anybody. It's not just flood insurance. It's insurance. Could be any product or industry can look at these case studies and think about how they can apply it to their market. So white papers for anybody, right? Then the PowerPoint presentation, that's specifically geared toward the flood insurance industry because that's the conference, right? But in neither case was any of that material geared toward Solstice Innovations. And now, though, that I've got that material, I can take it, break it down further, and reuse it, repurpose it to create marketing content for Solstice Innovations. And I think anybody can do that. Any industry can do that. And that's why I really just wanted to put this quick podcast together in the absence of having a guest. So just give you a little behind the scenes of how, in this one instance, AI was used to put together various materials for various purposes. So I hope you got something out of this. I would love to hear how you use AI. We talk about it in automation in our systems and those tasks and things like that. But outside of that, how do you use AI? I just gave you one or maybe a couple of examples here. Love to hear how you use them. Hit us up on our Solstice Innovations LinkedIn page, or go to solstice.tech and go to our contacts page, shoot us a message, or leave some comments on our YouTube channel. But love to hear from you. Love to learn more how anyone else is using AI out there. All right. You can also download the white paper that I'm talking about by going to solstice.tech. Go to our resources page, and one of the options there is white paper, and you will find case studies in successful marketing white paper there. So again, love to hear from you. Thanks very much. I hope you got something out of this. This has been The Sip.